So I'm looking at an article that says, I'm terrified. Millions of U.S. face eviction moratoriums nears end. Ladies and gentlemen, the pandemic is over a year come and gone. And we're sitting back in the U.S. American media and television and all of the networks, news publications all over the country are sitting back doing film footage of all these people that are going to be in disbelief of what's happening with the rental moratorium and it expiring on the 1st of August. Okay, so now they act surprised, and I'm sitting back, and look, my heart goes out to those people who truly need it. But there's millions of U.S. Americans that have exercised the renter moratoriums. And I'm somewhat semi-partial to it because I've been in business my whole life and I came from absolutely nothing financially. Now, when I say that, I don't say that I came from poverty because that would be an insult to my parents. But I came from a great middle-class family. But when I decided to go into entrepreneurship and business, my parents gave me absolutely zero in money to get started and fund my life in regards to rent, to food, to anything. In fact, so much so that they sat back and said, look, why don't you go get a job instead of putting yourself through all of these issues with creditors and everything? And I decided to pick the tougher road. And so hence, 20 some odd years have went by and I've worked. And even before that, I look at where my parents came from. And my parents have went out and they didn't come from an affluent means. In fact, they came from more of a lower affluent means and worked their ass off to get there. My parents taught me, look, Jerome, if you go out and you have a good work ethic, you're gonna have the whole world in front of you. And so when I was 14 years old, I got a job with Kroger's, with Smith's grocery stores. And I went in there and I worked my ass off. I was pushing carts and I was bagging groceries and I was stocking food and I was going in and stocking shelves. And I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be doing 80% of the work that I was doing for the price that I was doing it for. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was back when minimum wage was $3.85 an hour, back in the late 1980s. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I sit back and I go, I worked hard at a young age. And by the age of 16, I was a cashier. Over $20,000 worth of groceries pushing through my cash register every single night. I would go to school 7:45 in the morning, get out of school at 2:30, go to wrestling practice, and then go from 4 o'clock to midnight. I would work every single day. Get home at 12:30, 12:45, go to bed by 1 a.m., and I was back at school on time at 7:45 in the morning. And I did that. I was in sports. I was working full time. I was hitting 40 hours a week because I was a good employee. So I started off with like 20 hours a week, grew to 30 hours a week, grew to 40 hours a week, and it was all through the means of my work ethic. By the age of 17, I was an assistant manager at that grocery store. At the age of 18, I was an assistant manager sitting at one of the highest levels in that store that people never get to. And one of the biggest things was it was because of my work ethic and drive, my consistency. And so, ladies and gentlemen, when I went through a miserable hell in 1997 and the company that I worked with went under. I was making $250,000 a year, went to zero, and I came back from that. And I said, you know what? Within a few days, I went out and I got a job waiting tables. I went down to the Alamo where there was a ton of restaurants down by the Riverwalk in San Antonio. And me and my buddy Damien sat back and said, you know what? We're screwed. We have no money. Let's go get a job waiting tables in 1997. And within 48 hours, I had a job waiting tables. Never waited tables ever before in my life. We just figured we could do this at night. We can wait tables all night long, and I can work and run my business during the day, and I can make extra money just to pay my rent and live and put food on the table, even though it was substantially less than what I was making before. I didn't let ego get in the way. I didn't sit back and go, oh, I made $20,000 last month and I'm not gonna go and work for $200 tonight waiting tables. I said, you know what? That $200 every single night is gonna afford to pay my rent, put food on the table, and afford me to go out and build a new business. And so, ego aside, I got my ass to work. Within 48 hours, I had a job. Then, a few months later, we had a business going. and I was making a few grand a month, not even anything close to what I was making before, not even close. And so between me and a couple buddies, I was making about $4,000 or $5,000 a month, and I was able to stop waiting tables just a couple months into it. But I worked, and every day I was working towards something. I didn't wake up and feel sorry for myself. I was working towards something. And so then I came back, I decided, you know what, great time to come back, finish my education. Had 2 semesters left, 1 year, if I took a couple summer courses. And so that's what I did. I came back to Albuquerque, I went back into school. When I got back, I remember answering a couple want ads because I didn't know what to do. I felt like I felt like a failure at the time. I felt like I had let myself down, everybody else down for coming back to home to go back to school. But was I really? I mean, I was going back to finish my education. And I sat back and I answered an ad doing handyman work, and I ended up doing that for 3 days, ladies and gentlemen. But in less than 24 hours, I had a job. And in 72 hours, I decided that job, I would never work for anybody ever again, in spite of how broke I was. And so I put my head down, I went to work. I started working on getting my contractor's license. I was flying back and forth to San Antonio with money I didn't even have, just trying to get my business, staying affluent, doing my business out there, flying back, going to school, flying back, and just doing whatever it took. And ladies and gentlemen, in spite of all the financial hardship that I went through, I made it. I made it because I was consistent. And a mentor of mine years ago said, Jerome, you'll never fail if you never quit. And so I never quit. I just continue to work and work and work. And so when I look at these people that are sitting back, and although there are people that are in need of rental assistance, I also look at the over 6% of our U.S. population that's still on unemployment. I look at my job sites and my crews, and when I sit back, I go, man, I would love to put about 8 more people to work, but I can't find qualified people. And I know they're out there. I know that they're sitting home someplace, because at one point in time, it wasn't an issue bringing those people in. Professional admins. Ladies and gentlemen, I used to have 2 personal assistants. Now I have 1. I can't find qualified help for a quality admin in my office, for a personal assistant, as good as the ones that I've had in the past, because they come in and they start off good for 2 weeks and then they're horrible after that. Ladies and gentlemen, there are jobs available out there. So when I hear people saying that they can't find work, it makes me chuckle, because I say bullshit. Because ladies and gentlemen, all I see all over town, everywhere I go, is help wanted signs. Every business I drive by, help wanted, we're hiring. People are giving buy-in incentives and stipends to people just to come in and get people to work. The biggest problem is not the lack of work out there. The biggest problem is the lack of motivated people to get off their ass and go back to work. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call all your bullshit. I don't care who posts on this, and any type of confrontation. I've been self-employed my whole life, since the age of 18 years old, with a few nominal months here and there in between to breathe. And I've always had work. And I never worry about it. You know why? Because sometimes I'll worry, I'll sit back and go, damn, what happens if we don't get work on these days? And anymore, I don't worry about that anymore, because I've been blessed. And I sit back and I say, you know what? God has blessed me with work for 26 years of my life being self-employed. But the determining factor is me, waking up every morning and going to work. In 2008, ladies and gentlemen, when Lehman Brothers collapsed and the whole financial crisis of the world fell apart, and we had mass hysteria in the world, one of the largest financial crises in U.S. history. Ladies and gentlemen, I went from making 6 figures a month to making almost less than 5 figures a month and less than $10,000 a month for 3 months. And it took my temperature, because we were servicing debt on over 5 figures a month just on projects. And so when that happened, I sat back and said, you know what? I told my wife, stop shopping at Neiman Marcus, stop shopping at Ross. We need to position ourselves to figure out which properties we're willing to lose first, just in case all of this that's out of our controls continues. And she said, for the first time ever in her entire life, knowing me, she saw worry in my eyes. But I didn't sit back and feel sorry for myself and say, oh my God, I'm gonna lose properties. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I lost 0 properties. To this day, I've lost 0 properties, and I have bought hundreds upon hundreds of properties, hundreds of millions of dollars in acquisitions and trades of real estate over the last 26 years of my career, and we've lost 0 as far as money and properties. Now, does that mean that it wasn't hard? Does that mean that I didn't have to wake up every morning with a pit in my stomach and go to work? Every single morning, I got up with a pit in my stomach for 3 months, ladies and gentlemen, and it would have been so much easier just to roll back in that bed, crawl in there, and feel sorry for myself. But in spite of that, I said, you know what? I'm gonna go to work and I'm gonna do everything I can in my power to bust my ass, make as many calls, talk to as many customers. If my phone rings and somebody calls in looking for work, I know they have some type of money. I don't know what money that is. I don't know how much money that is. All I know is that they have money because they wouldn't be picking up the phone to call me. And I'm gonna find out what that dollar amount is, and I'm gonna take it from them, and I'm gonna give them in return the best quality product and service that money can buy. And with that attitude, ladies and gentlemen, every single morning with that pit in my stomach, I made the sign of the cross and said, God, give me the ability today to go out and be the best Jerome can be. And I'm gonna put everything else in your hands and just believe that things are gonna be okay. And ladies and gentlemen, by April of 2009, not only were we servicing the debt to all our construction projects and everything that was going on, I was back in Phoenix buying new real estate. Was it incredibly A-class real estate? No, it was shitty real estate, ugly ass real estate, piece of shit real estate that cash flowed, that made me money to continue servicing my debts. All that garbage turned into over $15 million worth of assets. 2 years of busting my ass and grinding with that attitude. I remember walking into Home Depots, looking around, thinking, man, I just wish I had something to buy today to put on a job site and make money. And I couldn't wait until the day came back that the hammers were going in a subdivision again, and I was calling my suppliers, delivering materials to a job site that I could see just like what's behind me. And so never again have I ever complained about having too much work. Never again have I complained about having too much stuff going on and too much stress, because ladies and gentlemen, that was more stressful than anything I'd ever been to. And there's people sitting at home whining, crying, and complaining about the rental moratorium, surprised that the federal government didn't bail them out again. Holy shit, it's been a year and 3 months, ladies and gentlemen. Get off your fucking couch and go back to work. It's time. And for those of you guys that feel that I'm being hard on them, I am, because I know where my parents came from. I know where my grandparents came from. I know how hard they've worked. I know in spite of all the hardship that they went through when they were younger, and the lifestyle that my parents gave me, not because they were affluent, but because they were hard-ass workers. And to know what I put together from absolutely nothing, I'm sitting back telling you, get off your ass, go back to work. There's work out there. There's a lot of companies looking for work. Put your ego in your back pocket. And ladies and gentlemen, if you go out there with an attitude that you're gonna win, you're gonna go back to work, and you're gonna make shit happen, you might take something that's less affluent today, but what does tomorrow bring as long as you get back to work? So just like the times that I took shit I didn't want and made me have a pit in my stomach, I went back to work, ladies and gentlemen. I put my working hat on, I put my working boots on, and I put my best foot forward to make things happen. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason that I'm standing here today.